Hello, and welcome to the next episode of the EdUp AI podcast. I'm Jason Gulia, and we're going to be thinking a lot about artificial intelligence, education, and society more broadly. I'm really excited today to talk to Mike DeKock. He is a CPA. He is also the CEO of MJD Advisors, and he does a lot of work with regulation and thinking about AI and EdTech. So, Mike, I'm just going to dive in and then we'll go from there. So, my question for you is, what should schools and colleges be thinking about right now? So if they're thinking about working AI into their everyday operations or into their colleges, what should they be thinking about? What kind of concepts and questions should they be circling around right now?
Yeah. Thank you, Jason. Really excited to be here. Really appreciate and excited for the conversation. And I like how you phrased the question, because really the only way you can screw this up right now is by not thinking and by not being able to demonstrate thought, which is either you are choosing to ignore AI altogether and not going to do anything with it, as well as you're just going to dive right in without any thought and without any evaluation. And I think really the best place to start is taking an inventory and understanding what are all the potential possible use cases that are out in the universe, and which ones do we want to prioritize. And I think if you don't do that, if you don't get your arms around that, you'll never get started, because possibilities are endless, right? That's what everybody talks about. And once you get to that point, it's really about making decisions around, okay, what are we going to allow people to just figure out on their own and experiment with, and we can set guidelines and expectations around that, versus kind of the bigger opportunities that are much more complex as you get into admissions decisions and profiling students, fundraising, outreach, kind of all those kind of things that are either scary or exciting depending on how you react to those things. And those need to be very well thought out, documented, evaluated, all the way up to school boards and trustees, all the way at that level.
Yeah, there's so much in that answer that I think is so important. And I really think I love your first point about the plan. And one of the things that I think is so key to remember is that having no plan becomes a plan, right? It becomes a bad plan, right? You need to have some way of approaching it. Even if it's not laid out from beginning to end, you need to have some process, because students are using these programs, employees are using these programs, and by not really thinking about it, not taking it head on, that just becomes kind of a bad plan moving forward. And then the other kind of principle you mentioned was really don't start from scratch. Take an inventory, see what people are already doing, see what's already in place. So from the position of colleges and schools, so who should be doing this? So, whose job should this be? And very practically, what kind of stuff should they be doing? What should they, so for example, if they're going to create an inventory, how would you recommend they start doing that? What would be like step number one in building that inventory?
I mean, what I think is really interesting about AI and just how it's impacting organizations around the world right now is it's everyone. It's every single person in the organization becomes impacted by it. And so they need to have a seat at the table. So obviously you have to have, your information security folks involved, your compliance teams involved, but it also has to be the teachers, the people that are on the front lines, or the ones in the back offices, all the way up to the CEO. So this is really a time for that AI committee to take a broad look across the organization, and be able to kind of filter it through. I think the organizations that are going to do this the best are going to be led by literally the top levels of every piece of it.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think that we underestimate how important buy-in of the upper levels is. Like, that's going to be really what pushes a lot of this forward. And then from there, incorporating as many voices as you can, and especially thinking about, say, the college and university side. Yeah. So obviously professors, faculty, administrators, the higher ups, and also, and this is different depending on school, students too. I think that they should have a lot of voice in what is being created. And this goes all across the board. I think about this in terms of colleges and universities because that's my own angle and that's the field that I work in. but ed tech too. It astounds me how many ed tech products and companies don't consult students on a regular basis. And then they create these programs that, yes, the kind of direct customer is the college or university, but the indirect customer is also the student, especially if they have a student facing product. So does that seem accurate based off of what you've seen, that we haven't really seen much student voice? So maybe there's a way to get them to the table a little bit more.
Right. Well, especially when you talk about high schools and that level and elementary, yeah, it's absolutely that is forgotten. So much becomes overshadowed, and it makes sense that it would be overshadowed by the parents, by the teachers. That those are the voices that are heard. And I don't know that I've heard a student voice as to how they want AI to impact their education. It really hasn't been that angle.
I think there are so few venues that are open to them, and I'm starting to see them now. I think on a very anecdotal level, we're starting to see an uptick in conferences that have students in them, or panels that have student voice, and maybe even student-led panels. I haven't seen those too much. I think they're around the corner. I'm trying to design one myself too, and I started to see other people kind of creating something like that, where we can kind of hear students talk about this technology. All right, and we are around 6.5 minutes. So I had one quick follow-up question. So regulation. So what should schools be tracking, right? One of the things that's so interesting now is that we, for a long time, have had this wild west, right? Especially when it comes to AI products and ed tech products, where there's been some regulation, and a lot of it has been applying regulation that was there for a while, and just applying it to AI products, which will get you a certain to a certain distance, right? Will help you out to get started, but are there certain regulations, certain things that are, in the works right now that schools should be tracking, right? Things that, I don't, on the government level or anything like that. What should colleges be looking at?
I mean, it seems to be every month. I looked at a map. I should have pulled the numbers, but it was like you could see the states that have proposed regulations, the states that have them in place, and it was like an outbreak that was streaking across the country as each of them are trying to figure it out. What makes it tricky is they're all different. But the basic general similarity is, well, in much of this, I mean, education is already required. You have to control your data. You have to understand where it is. You have to be able to remove it. You have to have all of those kind of controls and pieces in place. The other side of it that I don't think we've figured out yet is that I think will start to become a real big emphasis is the idea of bias and automated decision making. And when you start to get into that, human in the loop type of decision making, I think those are going to be the big focus areas. And I mean, right now, I don't think the tools are good enough without a lot of due diligence and understanding to place any sort of reliance other than just as a supporting tool in your organization.
Yeah, that's really helpful. And I want to wrap this up because we're around 8 minutes or so. This has been so important, Mike. You've laid out in many ways some of the ways that really schools can move forward. And one of the big things I think that I take away from this conversation, which is so rarely emphasized, is how complicated it is. When you look online and you read all the articles and you watch the videos and everything, I think we sometimes think it's simple, right? All those individuals who just say incorporate AI into every classroom, into every section of your operations. And I think that what you talked about today really emphasized how complicated that actually is, right? And how many different levels it's going to take, and how really step number one with moving forward is to incorporate as many voices as you can from every level, right? You need the uppers, you need people in the upper levels of your organization, of your school, but you also need buy-in from students, from faculty, right? That's what's going to transform it. Because I think that we tend to think of the technology as transformative, but really whether or not it's going to be transformative, it's going to be based off the organizations and how they approach it, right? The transformation needs to happen. It's not just going to happen by virtue of the products. And the other principle which you lay out so beautifully was that we should all work with what we already have, right? What we've already done. And then you kind of build from there, and you stay open, and you track things, and you figure out when you need to pivot. So thank you so much, Mike, for coming on and, walking us through a little bit about regulation and AI. This was very, very helpful.
This was fun. Thank you.